Simple and Out has a lot of amazing features that allow you to do incredible things, whether it's making status updates and reaching back into the past and running reports and seeing notifications, and the list goes on and on and on. But with great power comes great responsibility, and the idea that you need to protect some of these features so that not every single user that you have has access to them. You need to make sure that only certain administrators have certain rights. You need to make sure that only certain users can do certain things. And for that, Simple and Out has roles. Roles are a permission layer that allows you to craft situations where your users are given just the right amount of power and just the right number of features for your use cases. So every user needs to belong to a role, have a single role, and that role always governs what the user can and cannot do. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at roles, and we're also going to take a look at how you can assign or edit a user to change their roles. So we're going to start with roles in general. I'm logged in as Sarah Smith here in Arlington Financial, and I have clicked settings and I clicked roles on the left. And I'm an administrative level user. I'm one of our administrators, which allows me then to edit roles. So for the purpose of this video, let's let's say we want to add the ability for users to be able to update our credit card or print receipts or even change our subscription plans. We have a very specific lever for that in roles. So let's assume we need some users to have a little bit more elevated permissions. We don't necessarily want them to be administrators. We don't want them adding users or deleting users or a bunch of things like that. But we need to give them the ability to manage our billing information. So let's go ahead and set out a new role for that purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add Roles here. Now, we have a bunch of things that we will get into here shortly, but I'll need to start just by giving this role a name. So let's assume that this is accounting users. So let's just give this a name of an accounting role. And then I can decide whether or not I wish to make this role the default for all new users. Of course, if you create a new user, we'll pick a role by default. You get to control which role that is. It can save you time when you're adding a lot of users. In this case, I do not want this to be our default role. Now, just on a quick scan here, you'll notice we have a lot of levers, a ton of them, governing a lot of the major features of Simple and Out. And this list is getting longer. We're always working on new features in Simple and Out, and those new features demand new permission levers. So at the time of this video, we'll go through a little bit of this. Just know that there may be more permissions here than they were when we recorded this, because we're always adding new features to Simple and Out. Now, by default, right out of the top here, we have some user permissions around the board. A lot of our permissions in Simple and Out will land in one of two camps. You'll either have these binary permissions where it's either you can or can't. For example, view status update times. Can I view the status update time on the board, or do I just see people's statuses? And I either have this permission or I don't, right? It's either on or off. It's binary. On the other hand, we do have a number of permissions that are group aware. And so I don't know what the word I would use for that. If there isn't such a word, I don't think it's trinary, but they are ones where you have a couple of different options, three different options. In this case, I can either hide all users. I have no board access. I can see myself, but that's it. Or I can see all the users on the board, which obviously is very useful. Or there are middle ground options here where I could view only users that are in the same groups as me. And so these middle ground options allow our permissioning system to become group aware and allows you an incredible amount of power when it comes to determining what people can and cannot see. In this case, I'll leave view all users. That's fine. Now down here, we'll notice we have current status. And this is where you can manage what your users currently can do. And why this is important is because you're going to see some things in here that are very specific. I'm going to spend some time here. So if you can manage your own current status manually, this allows you to update your status by typing in a comment or picking a status and tapping buttons. Now, this is important. This is stuff you could do on simpleandout.com, or you could do it within your phone app or your computer app, Simple and Out Desktop, etc. If you do not have this permission, then you're not allowed to tap buttons to update your status. You can only update your status then by an automatic mean, think geofence beacons, networks, or desktop presence, or you can only do it by interacting with a common area device in a common place like front desk or time clock. Now, we have separate videos on front desk and time clock. We have separate videos on automatic status updating. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them here. For this purpose, we absolutely want to make sure these people can make sure they can update their status no matter where they are. Now over here, manage your own current status automatically. This flag specifically is for being able to use geofences, beacons, networks, and desktop presence are four different kinds of ways you can automatically update your status. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time here because this is really important. If I were to, and this is something we're asked about all the time, I don't want to allow my users to manually update their status. I only want them using geofences, beacons, networks, desktop presence. Can I do this? And the answer is, of course, yes. The answer is you can absolutely do this. So users can only enable those automatic status updating features. The automatic status updating features will update their status. The user cannot do it themselves. Now, this is something we do get asked for a lot. There is a downside to doing this. If the automatic status updating fails, why could it fail? Well, maybe the user didn't have internet access at that moment as they're walking around. Maybe the user was in airplane mode. Maybe the user's battery died. There's a number of different reasons why that automatic status update might not occur. And if it does not occur, the user will not be able to correct it themselves. That's what this is for, the manage your status manually. If you don't let the user manage their status manually, they're not going to be able to correct it themselves, which means if an automatic status update fails, their only recourse really is to either use a common area device. If you've created a front desk or time clock device, if you have those devices in your office, they could use those, or they're going to need to talk to someone with permission to update another user status and ask them to do it on their behalf. So if that makes sense in your organization, by all means, absolutely set that up. But just know that there is that gotcha there, and you're going to have to decide when a geofence fails for some reason. How does the user correct the record? Are they allowed to do it themselves, or do they need to contact somebody else or go to a standard place? And then finally, we have this other in the current statuses here. Can I manage the current status of other users? So, of course, you can elevate permissions to give users the ability to edit another person's status. Maybe your phone goes off and somebody's like, hey, my wife just went into labor. I'm running to the hospital. Can you update this in-out board for me real quick? These users would be able to update the board on somebody else's behalf. And just like our other settings, you can control whether or not they could do this or not, or whether they can only do this for people who are in the same groups, the departments, etc. Now, current statuses. We also have status history. Of course, you can nominate who can manage current status history, who can go back and correct the record, or could go back and see the record. You can always, by default, see your own status history, but can you see the status history of others? Can you manipulate the status history of others? We also have, similarly, reporting permissions. You can always run reports on yourself in Simple and Out, but can you run reports on other users in Simple and Out? Likewise, we have scheduled status permissions, where you can talk about whether or not you can schedule a status. Can I manage my own schedules? Can I schedule statuses for other people? Can I see other scheduled statuses? And again, we have videos on scheduled statuses, on past statuses, on most of the features we're looking at here in the rest of this video in roles. So I'm going to gloss over this a little bit, but just know that we have these settings. Notifications. Notifications are incredibly powerful features. You can control who can receive notifications and what kind of notifications they're allowed to use, or whether or not they can do something like manage reminders, as an example, across your whole organization. Simple and Out also has announcements, and you can control who can create announcements and whether or not you can see all of the announcements, or whether or not you can only view announcements that are targeted to the groups that you are within. And then finally, down here, we have some company permissions. And here we arrive at the permission for the purpose of this video, managing video billing details. And if I hover over the little question mark, these users can change the company's plan, credit card, and invoice email information. This is exactly what we're looking for our accounting example. So I'm going to check this box on. Now, I will spend a second talking about managed groups, because above here, we looked at all of these different settings where you can control whether or not you can see things or do things based on your group assignments. If you're using those permissions, be very careful about who you allow to manage groups, because of course, if whether or not you can see another user is dependent upon your groups, if somebody manages your groups and puts you in the wrong group, you may be able to see things you shouldn't be able to see. So you want to be very careful with who you allow to manage groups if you're using those group aware permissions above. Okay, so this looks great. I'm going to leave all this other stuff in the default. I think this is fine. And we're going to click create role. And here we go. Now we have an accounting role. You'll notice we have nobody assigned to it. We'll take care of that in a second. But before I leave this screen, I want to touch on something else that is really important for roles. As you can see, we have an administrative level role here. You could create new roles, you could delete roles, you could edit the roles that are here, but the administrative level role is special. You'll notice it here. Administrator. The administrator role, special role, and most permissions cannot be edited. And that's for probably what's a pretty obvious reason. Within your organization, somebody needs to be able to add users, delete users, change the plan, even go so far as to completely upend which things are subscriptions are on, which geofences exist, etc. And not only that, but we will also make a point of telling people that you should have more than one administrator. You can have as many as you like within Simple and Out belonging to this role. The only thing is you must always have at least one. But again, more than one is better to mitigate the old hit by a bus problem. So you'll notice there are a couple of things you could change in the administrator role, but most of these are off limits for the obvious reason that you have to be able to do these things if you're the administrator. Okay, so now let's talk about creating someone. I'm going to click on Arlington Financial here in the upper left. That'll take me back to the board. We need to assign someone our accounting role. We have a brand new accounting role. Who do we want to give this permission to? I think we should pick on Jacob Robinson here. So if I click on Jacob Robinson, I get his information and I can click Edit User. And when I get into Jacob's editing here, I can see his role. He's currently a regular user role. All I have to do is switch this to accounting. And then once I click Update User down here, Jacob will instantly get more or less permissions across all of Simple and Out's apps and integrations. It's pretty great. And if you're unable to remember what a role does, we have this handy little icon here you can click, which will give you an exact breakdown of what the user can do and what the user can't do. And as you change the role, you can change it to see exactly how that affects anybody's current behavior here. In our case, we know we want accounting, so we're going to go with that and click Update. And that's all there is to it. And now our user has billing permission. They can print receipts or change the credit card we have on file. So that's roles in Simple and Out. They are powerful ways to govern what users can and cannot do within the entirety of Simple and Out systems, applications, and integrations.